If you're wondering why I'm so emotional, it's that in this second song, these young men have roots in the same tradition as I do in the Church of God in Christ, but they've experienced enlightenment and they represent a new day. So inspiring. And now Maria is going to lead us in prayer.
Dear Lord Father, we are grateful for the opportunity and means to be quiet together, to know one another, and be known in our beloved faith community on this beautiful Sunday. Lord, as we gather together with our beloved community underneath the banner of your life, we recognize that we are worshiping on unceded Indigenous land and grateful for the territory upon which I worship from today, Chumash land. I acknowledge the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, the original stewards of this land, for they hold the memories, the traditions, and the culture of this land. Lord, today we remember that March is Women's History Month. I thank you for all the cherished women in our lives and in our histories, mothers, sisters, friends, and neighbors. We honor the women of Jesus's time who cared for the community of believers, who followed Jesus to Calvary, who buried him, who proclaimed Jesus's resurrection, who passed the gospel to their families, friends, and strangers. We honor the valiant women of our time as well, who nudge us back on track, who remind us of the promises of Christ, who claim the gospel for women too, who preach the reality of wholeness, who strain against the patriarchal church, and who challenge us to grow. Lord, this month may we also pause before the silences of the ages, find who has been left out, and craft new ways of inclusion for every silent voice. May this spiritual practice bring out the voices of all those struggling, all those left apart. May this month of reflection teach us to search for those stories that are different from our own. And in the finding, may we come to know ourselves changed, renewed where we are dry, hopeful where we are lost, and open where we are shut. As we also turn our hearts toward the present, Lord, today we also offer up our prayers for our sisters who suffer from physical and emotional abuse, and for the perpetrators of violence against them. We ask also that you create within each of us an awareness of the many subtle forms of abuse of women and girls that occur daily and hourly around us, and that contribute to an environment that allows abuse of women and girls to perpetuate. Lord, open our eyes to see instances where women and girls are treated as less than men and boys, in the workplace, in the media, in the family, and elsewhere, and empower us to raise our village's youngest children in an environment of respect for the dignity of every human being. God, may women across the globe continue to be empowered, knowing the love you offer, and let us go forth as valiant women of justice and peace. Amen. And now I turn it over to Kenichi.
Thank you, Maria. Please feel free to unmute as we all participate in our community reading from Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. So we will
Let the oceans roar and foam. Let the mountains tremble as the waters surge.
A river brings joy to the city of our God, the sacred home of the Most High. God dwells in that city. It cannot be destroyed. From the very break of day, God will protect it.
The
The
nations
nations
are
are
Nations
in
are in
chaos.
chaos, and their
Their
kingdoms
kingdoms
crumble.
crumble.
God's
God's
voice
voice
thunders,
thunders,
and the
and the
earth
earth
melts.
melts.
The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress.
Come,
Come
See the glorious works of the Lord.
He causes wars to end throughout the earth.
He breaks the bow and
snaps the
snaps
spear. He burns the shields with fire.
fire.
Be still
and know
know that I am
I
God.
am God. I will be honored by every nation.
Every nation.
I will be honored
throughout
throughout the world.
All right, now it's time for our announcements.
Well, welcome everybody. It's Sunday, March 12th, 2023. And today's voice is Peter Fitch, which is very exciting to me. I don't know if any of you have heard him speak before, but it's always a wonderful experience. And we're so glad you're back, Peter. It's so nice to see you again. I'm looking forward to hearing you. Thank you once again for your generosity. I know times are difficult for lots of us, so we really appreciate your generosity and your giving. There are some links in chat, and checks are also welcome, or use the QR code, which makes life very easy. So this Wednesday night, we're actually doing something a little different. I'm suggesting that we tune into a group call by the Poor People's Campaign of California at 6:30, and we'll provide links. I think all of us sometimes struggle to figure out tangible, concrete ways to actually work for social justice. It can be, and I think this call maybe will be illuminating and give us some ideas of concrete things that we can do. So I'm excited for that. Easter Sunday, April 9th is an in-person meeting once again. I haven't had a chance to join, but it looks really fun and really uplifting. So the address is there, and anybody who can make it, we will see you on Zoom if we are not able to be there. So this spring, Pastor David has got some amazing voices for us once again. Roy Donkin, Dr. Julian Watkins, who I think has spoken once or twice and always has really interesting and profound things to share. Leonie Madison, Sarah Weiss, Monique Lemon, Joan Hartman, Charlotte Gulap-Moore, and Oscar Gutierrez. So it's something to look forward to for our spring. We will share communion at the top of the hour. Where did Zoom Moonion go? I like that. So remember to have something to eat and drink for the close of the service today. And finally, our quote for today is by Julia Serrano. Until feminists work to empower femininity and pry it away from the insipid, inferior meanings that plague it, weakness, helplessness, fragility, passivity, frivolity, and artificiality, those meanings will continue to haunt every person who is female and or feminine. And there's our QR code once again, if you didn't catch it the first time.
Take a moment, everybody, to wake each other up and show some love. Show some love right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna take my shirt off. I don't know. I was supposed to be in my breakout group and I got thrown out somehow. Wow,
It
no.
happened on mine too. Like, I don't know, it just, maybe I pressed something.
Welcome back, everybody.
It was doing it too.
Well, I just find a lot of pleasure and gratification when it comes to sharing good people with you, sharing my friends with you. And today we have Peter Fitch, who technically is an American because here on Turtle Island, which we in the US, we have dominated that term, America, but Canada is in America. And yet Peter brings an inside, well, let me take this back, an outsider's perspective on reality, what we might consider to be reality. We're so influenced by, this world that we live in the United States. And sometimes we just need someone who is not in the house to talk to us. And that would be Peter. He's a pastor and theologian. And I just respect the fact that his heart has remained moldable, and he's retained neuroplasticity. And Peter has walked with people for years, along with his wife, Mary Ellen. He's walked with people through their deepest sorrows. And he's also walked with people in their greatest triumphs, including in his own family. He's got a beautiful family, and we all know how meaningful family is. So I'm not going to take any more time. I present to you my very dear friend, Peter Fitch, everybody.
Thank you. It's so beautiful to be here. I'm a retired pastor now, and this is the first time I've been in a church for a while. So it's and it touched my heart so much, I can't tell you. It was so beautiful, the music and the sharing and the greetings, and I think of David and Diane as priceless people in our life. I've learned so much from David. So this is it's been for many years now. We've had the opportunity to live together for 1 or 2 weeks a year, or 1 or 2 weeks, sometimes 1 or 2 weeks a year, sometimes 1 or 2 weeks a term. And so I've just learned so much, I can't tell you. So I have a little PowerPoint, and should I just share my screen, David? Will that work? I think so. Okay. Just. There it is. I'm just having a little trouble seeing how to get to my directions to make this full screen. You know, I can't
Go
get
to
rid of
view up at the top there. Go to view and then hit presenter view.
Okay.
And ask them what they see, because they may see something different.
Yeah. So
okay, I don't
view is right over here. I guess my pointer's not
my
showing.
Zoom controls are kind of in the way. That's wait, nicely done.
Slideshow.
Yeah.
Presenter view.
Good.
What are you guys seeing now?
We see all the slides.
Yeah,
So
we see the little slides as well.
Okay.
I want
Yeah.
to
We want to go.
big slides.
Ariel? Oh, no, thank you. The pancake was good for right now.
We want to go to. I should have done it a different way. Okay. Back to this.
Okay.
What we do is slideshow. Well, let's see what you see now.
There you go.
okay.
Okay, I've got a lot of, I'm seeing people instead, and I don't think I'll get to see my whole screen. Wonder how to minimize that. Maybe here. There it is. Okay, great. Thanks, Brad. Okay, so I'm calling this talk Little Critic versus Wise Woman. And let's see. And I was thinking about the voices that we hear inside of ourselves. I remembered that in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, there are thoughts about this. In Isaiah, there's this word, your ears will hear a word behind you. This is the way, walk in it, whenever you turn to the right or to the left. And it's this idea of something special inside of us that helps us to know which way is right or which way is wrong. And I know I used to have students that would say to me, I never hear any kind of a voice from God. And I'd say, well, according to this verse, it seems like you hear when you get off the path. This is whenever you hear a word behind you, this is the way, walk in it, when you turn to the right or to the left. But I think there's this longing inside of us for deep wisdom. And in the New Testament, Jesus said something about this too. Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me. I love stories of people having surprising wisdom or being directed by surprising wisdom. And maybe an example would be, one time I was trying to get together with my brother, whom I hadn't seen in some years, and he lived in Toronto and I was going to be in Toronto. He lived actually outside of Toronto. And I said, hey, I'm coming, you know, will we be able to get together? And he said, actually, I've got so much going on, I don't think so. And then I happened to walk face to face into him right in front of my son's apartment building. Mary Ellen and I were walking and with our daughter-in-law, and suddenly a voice says, Pete. And my brother had just happened to be in the right place at the right second. And we had this intersection that led to a wonderful dinner the next night. And this just happened recently, Mary Ellen and I knew that we had to go to Texas to see a friend, and so we did. But we also thought if we're going to be there, we should probably spend a little bit of time just after we were doing that. We should spend some time just sort of by ourselves, kind of retreating or being alone or having fun. And we wondered where we could do that in a place that wasn't too crowded and would be warmer than here, and would have lots of nice places to walk and probably some pubs to go to. And I started to remember that one of my graduate students talks about his part of Texas as being very beautiful in the hill country. And so I thought I should contact him. And the next day, before I did that, he wrote to me and he said, there are mornings when I wake up and I just wish I could have a coffee with you. And I thought, well, that's so great. So I wrote to him and I said, maybe that could happen. Do you know any place in your area that wouldn't be outrageously expensive there, where we could walk and get to pubs? And he said, I have a little cottage on the back of my property and it empties into a canyon, and you could walk for half an hour and it takes you to all the pubs in a beautiful little town. And he said, and we'd love you to just use the cottage. And so it's not outrageously expensive. And I thought, well, that is just perfect. Thank you. So I love these little stories. The best one that I remember is years ago, I was talking to somebody, a woman who had just finished a university course in Ontario. And she said she graduated and then she went traveling. She went around the world, and her roommate went around the world in the opposite direction. And without any planning, 6 months later, they walked into each other face to face in Hong Kong. And I said, wasn't that wonderful? And she said, no, I didn't like her. But it still was amazing. What is it that sort of directs us that we can't see? What's the invisible thing that's directing us? But my real best example, even beyond that one, is, haven't you ever noticed how often when you're talking with David Moore, he says something that isn't the exact answer to what you have said, but it's actually the deeper thing that you were thinking? Have you ever noticed this? I think he does it all the time. And I think it's because he spends a lot of his life in a kind of a contemplative pursuit. He spends quite a bit of time just walking, thinking in a prayerful way. And I've noticed that there's such a depth to the things that he says that very often he's speaking to somebody and I go, oh shoot, he didn't answer their question, but he answered what they're really thinking. So I love this thought. Something in the way she moves attracts me like no other lover. I love the Spirit. I love the Spirit of God. I love the Spirit of God that comes through us in wisdom. And something in the way she moves. In Jewish thought, the Spirit of God is feminine and the voice of God is feminine. Something in the way she moves attracts me like no other lover. Oops. So I guess I've always had this question though, is the thing that I love, this invisible thing that connects us with others in surprising ways, directs us, is it God or is it something in our brains? And actually I'm at peace with either answer, but I love it either way. And it makes me think about the people that say that creativity is something that comes through them rather than something they make up. I remember John Denver said, don't thank me for these songs, people. They just come through me like a radio or something. I love, that's not a very good John Denver impression, but I remember that he said that. And then Elizabeth Gilbert gave a wonderful TED Talk, and she told this story about Tom Waits. She said he was driving on the Los Angeles freeway, and suddenly a melody came and started playing in his head. And he just spoke to it. And he said, can't you see that I'm driving? I don't have a pencil or a pad. There is nothing that I can do right now to help you be born. If you're insistent on being born right now, go and bother Leonard Cohen. But I love this idea that creativity, as well as wisdom, comes beautifully through us. And I think that the mystics from all ages and in many different religions and many different ways of thinking have come to the same conclusion, that if we could learn to be still and know, if we could learn to be still, we would learn to know something deep, something worth knowing. If we could learn how to be quieter, maybe a better voice could come out through us. And today, I think that there's a longing for a higher consciousness. There's a longing for a higher consciousness that's birthing all around the world. And sometimes we speak of it as being, we want the best characteristics that we've historically thought of as being feminine in our political governance, rather than the worst characteristics that we've traditionally thought of as being masculine. The best characteristics, whether it's in a man or a woman, that we think of as being feminine have to do with nurture and collegiality and balance and care for the world and the earth, as well as all the people in it, and not just the rich people in it, but the whole society. The worst characteristics that we think of as masculine have to do with competition and testosterone and domination. And we've had way too much of that kind of leadership. Around the world, when we see leaders, either men or women, that are working from the other set of values, it's so beautiful to us, at least to me. And it seems that some people are crying out for subjectivity rather than objectivity. We've been objective too long, and objectivity has made us kind of enemies of ourselves. People are looking for the real and the individual rather than the symbolic and the abstract. And people are trying to learn how to listen and follow intuition rather than just rational processes. Some people talk of this as learning how to hear the wisdom from the right hemisphere of our brain versus the left hemisphere, the speech and language that comes from the left hemisphere of our brain. But the problem is that internal voices sometimes are very helpful, but sometimes they're not. And many of us have had experiences with, we had a compulsion to do something and it turned out not to be a good thing. Or maybe somebody else has told us what we should do. But it seems to me that the growth of wisdom is learning how to figure out which voice is which. And I'm thinking right now that the greatest wisdom that I've seen recently is from this wonderful woman that David told me about 2 years ago. Her name is Valerie Carr, and she wrote a book called See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love. And I think she's amazing. She's a Sikh person, she's an activist, she's a lawyer. And I think that I think she's, in her book, as she tells her own story, I think she's really reaching a place where I hope all the religions can get to. I think that she has a higher understanding of the values of Jesus than most Christians that I've ever seen, including me. And I'm just so impressed with her. So what happened with her is she grew up in Northern California. It was a Sikh family, but they'd been in California for many, many years, like 100 years or something by the time she came along. And then what happens is that she's at Stanford studying, and 9/11 takes place. And as her graduating project, she realizes that so many hate crimes are happening to people of color. People that can be identified as Muslim or maybe Sikh people because people think they're Muslim are actually being put to death or harassed in a terrible way after 9/11 all over the United States. So she gets permission to do a graduate project where she goes and documents with film. She interviews people that have experienced hate crimes. And all of this happened because the first person who was killed after 9/11 for being brown in America was a person that she called uncle. He wasn't technically a family member to her, but he was part of her sort of extended family, someone she loved. And he was killed just because somebody thought that he was a threat, and because of the way that he looked. So she just begins to document hate crimes, and that ends up changing her life. She thought she was going to be an academic person, but and work at a university, but instead she ends up becoming a lawyer and fighting for change. And I just think that the book is so wonderful. She talks about learning how to see no stranger, learning how to instead of seeing people with hostility or with suspicion, She said, we can train our brain to see people with wonder. And she wants to learn how to see every person in the world this way. She's the one who talks about saying goodbye to the little critic and welcoming the wise woman. And I just want to read for you part of her book. It's a bit long, but I just think you'll enjoy it. She's talking about giving birth and remembering what it was like to give birth to her son. And she says, during my transition on the birthing table, when the pain was at its worst, there was a voice in me that said, I can't. But there was also the voice in me whispering, breathe, and echoing my mother's words, you are brave. Who were these voices inside me? Who are the voices of fear and wisdom inside all of us? I think the voice that said, I can't, has been inside me since childhood, ever since the boy in the schoolyard first held up a mirror to my small brown female body and showed me that I had reason to feel afraid. The voice was fully formed by the time I was a teenager. It told me I wasn't beautiful enough, smart enough, strong enough, or good enough to do the things I wanted to do. It was the voice that shamed and judged me. In junior high school, I used to pull my long black hair like curtains on either side of me in class so that no one could see my crooked nose or how ugly I was. The voice was just part of my stream of conscious thoughts, but as it got stronger over time, I began to notice its patterns and tone. I named it the little critic. I called it a he. My inner life became a constant process of tuning out the little critic and trying to do the brave thing anyway. The voice grew loud in college when I dated Ram, who amplified my fears in the single refrain, what will people think? As the little critic grew big and fat from his words, he took the form of a ragged bird who liked to sit on the throne of my mind. He reached great heights during law school. Every time I decided to pursue passion projects instead of prestige, he liked to squawk, what's wrong with you? He got the most riled up right before I was about to put my art or voice into the world. They're going to eat you alive. He made me feel small. His was the presence in me when I turned to my mother at the moment of transition on the birthing table and said, I can't. But there was always another voice in me too. The power projected into me when my grandfather saw me as a warrior, leading me to knock on the church door. These are stories in the book. Pick up my camera after 9/11, hold on to the megaphone, walk away from the spinning gun, enter prisons and places of violence, find reconciliation, and breathe and push through pain. This was my internal wisdom, growing in presence and clarity through the seasons of my life. I didn't know how strong it was in me until I started to notice that every time my friends or students asked me for advice, I sounded like this very wise woman, tender and truthful, so very wise. In these moments, the little critic was always very quiet. He had nothing to say. I began to wonder whether the wise woman in me was the one I saw on the birthing table, the one with long flowing hair floating above me, watching me with compassion, the woman who had my face. She had echoed my mother's refrain, you are brave, you are brave. After Kavi was born, I heard myself speaking like this all the time to him. Oh, my love, I whispered into his ear, you are beloved in the world. You are strong and smart and loving and brave. Why don't you speak to yourself that way? Sharat asked me. That's her husband. Oh, I said. Sharat was often the one who had to step in when the little critic was filling me with doubt or anxiety. Now he was asking for backup. We can learn to mother ourselves, Audre Lorde once declared. So I decided to practice listening to the wise woman in me. I got a simple blank journal, carried it with me and wrote in it every day, sometimes 3 times a day, and simply let her speak. It always began the same way. Wise woman here. Wise woman says. She always began by telling me the state of my body. Oh, my love, you're tired today. It's okay. I got you. Then she told me what to do next, to rest or work. Go do this piece of the work and come back and report to me in 3 hours. She never berated me if I failed. She simply made a new plan and sent me off again. Listening to her voice literally every few hours is how I began to practice loving myself. Here's what I discovered about Wise Woman. Her voice is quiet. There's so much noise in my mind, the little critic, but also the cacophony of noises from the outside world, an endless stream of breaking news and social media and other people's thoughts. I have to get really quiet in order to hear her. How do I know when I'm hearing her voice? She's tender and truthful. She's not afraid of anything or anyone. She doesn't give me all the answers, but she does know what I need to do in this moment: to wonder, grieve, fight, rage, listen, reimagine, breathe, or push. She helps me to show up to the labor as my best self. I believe that deep wisdom resides within each of us. Some call this voice by different sacred names: Spirit, God, Jesus, Allah, Buddha nature, Waheguru. Others think of this voice as the intuition one hears when in a calm state of mind. My friend Jeremy calls the voice his inner professor, his teacher. My teammate Melissa calls her best friend. Whatever name we choose, listening to our deepest wisdom requires disciplined practice. The loudest voices in the world right now are ones running on the energy of fear, criticism, and cruelty. The voices we spend the most time listening to in the world and inside our own minds shape the way we see, how we feel, and what we do. When I spend time listening to people who are speaking from their deepest wisdom, I can feel understanding, inspiration, and energy nourish the root of my own wisdom. But I must not lose myself at the feet of others. My most vigilant spiritual practice is finding the seconds of solitude to get quiet enough to hear the wise woman in me. And just two more little things to say about this. She decides that she's had enough with Little Critic, and she wants to get rid of Little Critic and really enthrone Wise Woman in her life. And she has some friends from her Sikh community that decide they want this too, and they decide to create a ritual where they spend time together and they think about the voices, the things that the Little Critic says. And I thought this was very, very beautiful. She says, as I began to speak out more boldly about revolutionary love during the Trump era, I could hear the voice of the Little Critic inside me getting louder too. You're a lawyer, you can't use the word love. No one will take you seriously. I thought about terminating the Little Critic as a birthday gift to myself, but Wise Woman talked me down. No, she said, we need this little guy. He's part of you. We just don't need him in charge. I thought that was fantastic. So then what she does in her ritual is she listens, she asks Little Critic to say what it would like to say, and then she thanks Little Critic. And then she envisions the ragged bird that was on the top of her head flying away. And then she speaks to Wise Woman and she says, please come and come to and be enthroned in my mind. Let me listen to you always, first and foremost. And it turns out that she actually walks herself through a Sikh marriage ceremony to be married to Wise Woman. And she goes home and tells her husband, I'm married twice now. And he says, thank God. I really want you to listen to Wise Woman more than you listen to the Little Critic, because you're always so anxious when you listen to the Little Critic. So that's all I have to say today. I just thought there's a wonderful gift that we're all longing for in a new consciousness, which is to be led by spirit or the best part of our inner wisdom in a way that leads us to do the right thing. One of the great Jewish thinkers, Emmanuel Levinas, said, to know God is to know what needs to be done. And I love it when all of our energy comes in line with this best voice. So that's what I have to say today.
Wow. Well, I can really relate to, being in line with the energy that gets things done, that needs the things that need to be done. But another thing that rested on a branch of my brain as you were talking is I have this document that I need to complete. It's about 8 pages long, and I just, in my mind, I'm saying, why do I have to fill this out? Why don't they have, why is this not, a file online and I can just put autofill to fill in a lot of this instead of writing, who writes anymore? And it seemed so laborious. And honestly, the Little Critic became a big critic inside of me. The Little Critic is like, you got to get that done, and I'm arguing with the Little Critic, and the Little Critic is telling me what is actually starting to get on my nerves, but at the same time, trying to define me, trying to tell me that I'm not competent, I'm not capable. And I'm listening to Little Critic right now. So
You need one.
I need Wise Woman. So Wise Woman is probably on this call, Wise Women, and something in the way that you move, all of you, attracts me like no other lover. And I need to hear from you. We need to hear from one another. So I'm going to open the floor for anybody's responses or questions.
David,
Yeah.
it's Ruth. Having had a big critic in my brain for many, many years, since I love how the woman, the author described it as probably since she was a child. I think many of us can relate to that. And I learned at some point, I can't remember exactly when, Kayla and I used to work with high schoolers at our old church. And high school girls are particularly good at having the inner critic. And what I used to say to them, and I found it very helpful to me and to many people, women in particular, is, would I ever talk to you that way? Would I ever say that to you? Would I ever tell you that you can't, or you're ugly, or you're weak, or you're no good, or whatever? Would I say that to you? So, no, of course, would be the answer. I was like, then you don't say it to yourself. Would you ever say that to your friend, to this young woman? Would you ever tell a friend, you can't? No, you're not good, you're not strong, you're not whatever. Would you ever say that to someone? No. Then don't say it to yourself. When you talk about the inner critic or the inner voice taking practice, it really, really, really does. And I think so many of us know that from firsthand experience. It's almost like you have to slap yourself and say, stop. Would I say that to someone else? Would I talk to anybody like that? No, don't talk to yourself that way. So this message just so resonated with me because I know that so many of us have that inner critic in us, and it's real. And to practice otherwise, or to quiet it down, or to be okay with it, but then shift directions. Listen to the wise woman. Okay, that was my little critic. Now where's my wise woman? Yeah. To flip that is such an important thing. So thank you.
Ruth, you said so many of us have the little critic, and I was thinking, maybe everybody has a little critic unless they're a narcissist.
It's a big critic.
Good point, David. Good point.
Yeah. You mean just like sometimes people that acquire leadership with the worst characteristics of the masculinity that we've traditionally thought of, like presidents and pastors. And CEOs, those seem notorious.
And yet the Southern Baptist Convention doesn't think women should be heard.
Yikes.
Okay, that's a whole other subject.
I've been thinking that in ancient Judaism, although it's not a term that's in the Bible, but in ancient Judaism, the voice of God was called the Bat Kol, and it means the voice of the daughter. I just love it. That's their understanding, was the voice of the daughter. This is the beautiful, gentle thing that steers us in toward the right thing, the next thing that has to be done.
Caroline.
I guess I had two observations to make. The one is, I think there's a correlation between why women have inner critics and the observation you made earlier, Peter, about needing more feminine leadership, and how would the world look like if we had feminine attributes and power. I think there's a reason why people want us to doubt ourselves, so that we don't step into that role. But that's probably a whole nother conversation.
Caroline, what a wonderful one, because if that did happen, we might end up making a world that was just.
Yeah, maybe. I think so. I think I would if you put me in charge.
Well, you know, because of, I guess, because of history, Peter and I have held roles of leadership, you know, that are, you know, traditionally male. But Peter and I both, we have tried our best to incorporate femininity in ourselves,
Yeah.
and in the way that we approach. And I can say this, when I respect women so much, because even when a man does this, there are other expectations. You know, sometimes people expect us to perform or to compete, you know, that kind of thing. And we're just not there. That's not who we're going to be. I see Jacob wanted to weigh in. Is that right? Jacob, is your hand up?
Yeah, so now I realize this doesn't have anything to do with the conversation, or maybe it does. In the past week, I've been kicking myself because I think of stuff I could be doing is work 5 minutes before I leave work, so I will stare at the computer all day doing nothing, and then 5 minutes before I leave work, I get a little voice in my head saying, "You should have done this today," and it's good. I have to do it tomorrow, and that's been happening a lot lately. It's like whenever I feel stuck, I feel like time is wasted.
Jake, I'm going to go back to what Ruth was saying. Would I say that to you? Would any of us, you know, say that you're not getting enough done and that you're behind? And, you know, I had no impression of that of you. You know, I hear from you, I get emails, your activism and that kind of thing. And my mind always tells me Jacob's on top of things. Jacob's getting it done. So let me say, that's all you, that's your little critic.
But when I miss an opportunity, when I'm struggling to find, when I'm struggling with a mental block, I don't feel okay with myself. I feel like I shouldn't have any mental blocks at work.
Peter, you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know. I just think it's I think I'm the same way. I struggle too. You know, I don't know why I'm so good at listening to the negative voice. I don't know why I'm so, my friends used to say, worry is praying for something you don't want. But I spend so much time just first, I imagine the worst. I imagine the worst outcome. And then I am sure that that's going to happen. And then I spend a whole bunch of time trying to figure out what I'm going to do when the worst happens. I don't know. Just feels like it's a prison that we have. And I think that Valerie's she's encouraging us to be brave, to be really brave, to say no to all of these feelings and to learn to get a little clearer.
Linnea.
Well, Jacob, I heard from you a word that comes up way too often in my inner voice. The should word. I call it the S word because I have I impose so many shoulds on myself. And
yeah,
Peter,
we need to stop shooting on ourselves.
There you go. And Peter, I really love what you said about just stopping to listen and discern which voice is which. And I flashed on the first thing that was helpful to me in my life was Judges, Joshua, I don't know. The story, and I remember the chapter, but not the book, where Elijah's running away from success, more or less, and he's going through a profound period of despair, and he's looking for the voice of God, and the fire and the wind and the earthquake come, but God wasn't in them. And then in the King James version, it reads, I think it's King James, his still small voice, and that's where God was. The other translations call it a gentle, quiet voice and things like that. But I like the still small voice. Don't listen for the obvious or the noisiest and so on. And I have a great handy tool for learning to discern that inner critic from wisdom. Julia Cameron's book, The Artist Way. Shelby Figueroa once led a class, actually more than once, on that book. And there was an exercise where we were to write something positive about ourselves, like you are fabulous or you are competent, and all the, just some positive affirmation about yourself on a piece of paper, write it down over and over. And as I did that, I can hear it. And my inner voice it mocks constantly. And it's really sarcastic, like, oh yeah, right. Sure, you're going to do that. Sure, you're like that. Just all kinds of little barbs. And I wasn't even aware of those before, but it was back talking me all the time when I was just trying to have a positive view of myself. So anyway, I just really appreciated your message. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks. Thank you too.
Well, I don't want to exclude anyone, but we've been given a lot to sit with, and I would like to take just a brief moment here together to be still and to be quiet. Now notice your breath. Feel your breath. We are reminded that we can do less and accomplish more. We can do nothing and accomplish everything, because we are sitting in the place of our purpose. We bless the place where we sit right now. We celebrate the place where we sit right now. And our quiet hearts will hear, and our eyes will see. We will see that something in the way she moves attracts us like no other lover. Let's have communion. Can we first, though, say thank you to Peter with an applause? Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Yeah, when we have communion, we are also blessing our friendships. We are blessing the relationships that we have with one another, but also our families, because we represent people that we love. We are a part of them. They are a part of us. And so when we do this, we bring them with us into community, and when we encounter them, we take the benefit of our time together, our experience together, to them as well. We learn how to give, but also to receive, because they are empowering us. Some of them, we don't recognize that they're empowering us, because they can actually, we can find them draining our energy. But that's where we have to sometimes have some boundaries, but it's not that we reject anyone. We receive everyone. We are one people. We are one family on one planet. And those of us who are here in the US and Canada and Mexico, we are one continent. So we bless the power of community in communion. Would you take and eat the body and the blood of our Redeemer, Jesus? I'm grateful for everybody. It's a big deal in my life to see you, to know you, to love you. And I consider it a privilege to be able to be with you. Peter, I think Mary Ellen is on, right? You there, Mary Ellen? Yeah, there you are. Mary Ellen, before we go, would you greet everybody? Yeah.
Hello, everybody. So great to be with you today, and so great to see you, David.
Hi, David. It's Brad as well.
Hey, Brad. Brad Jerzak. All right. Wow. What a treat. See y'all later.
Thank you.